Hi there, Dave Markham here for UU A Way of Life. Welcome to the ninth session of Tuesday night class. I'm recording this on Tuesday night, February 17th, which is the night of Mardi Gras because tomorrow is Ash Wednesday. So it's a special time of the year as we move into the Lenten season. And I think it's very apropos that we are talking about the first principle of Unitarian Universalism, that we covenant together to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We also will be talking tonight about the seventh principle, which is respecting the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And we have spent a number of our classes talking about this idea of a person. What is the self? And I've written a little bit about that in my book on the 16 Reflections on the First Principle of Unitarian Universalism. And I thought maybe I would read the preface to essay number 9, which I entitled The God Seed Inherent in the First Principle of Unitarian Universalism. It's a little easier for me to read than it would be to extemporaneously describe this. So if you'll bear with me, let me just read what I wrote. The ego tells us that not only are we separate from God, our origin, but that we are special, unique, like a little God ourselves. As the divine spark grows within us, like a seed, we become aware that our separate, special self is an illusion. It's something that our ego created that keeps us from our source, what some people call God, the source of our being, the ground of our being. We often drop the pretense, the roles, the scripts we identify our ego self with in times of crisis. In a crisis, those ego illusions don't mean much anymore, nor will they at the time of our death. Saints know that these roles and scripts are insane. In the Course in Miracles, it calls it a little act of madness when we separated ourselves from the ground of our being and created our egos. Saints are like people in recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous, who have learned that they have to surrender to their higher power, whatever they conceive their higher power to be. It is in surrender that they achieve salvation and new life at a miraculous level, meaning that their perception and their consciousness has been significantly altered. Aldous Huxley wrote in his book, The Perennial Philosophy, quote, "For as all exponents of the perennial philosophy have constantly insisted, man's obsessive consciousness of and insistence on being a separate self is the final and most formidable obstacle to the unitive knowledge of God. To be a self is, for them, the original sin. And to die to self in feeling, will, and intellect is the final all-inclusive virtue." End quote. And so sometimes our teenagers say things to us and to their friends, "Get over yourself. Yeah, you're not that important." And it appears to be a put down, but it also I think, is a very spiritual concept and advice. I think I've never heard or read a UU sermon on the idea of the ego as compared to the spiritual seed within us. And one of my arguments with Unitarian Universalism is we focus too much on social justice, which social agencies and government and other people should be dealing with, and we avoid the very thing that religion is supposed to be doing, which is facilitating spiritual awareness and growth within each one of us and in our churches. Reverend Galen Guenrich, the senior pastor at All Souls in New York City, has suggested that one of the most important spiritual practices of Unitarian Universalists should be gratitude. And that gratitude, of course, is based on the seventh principle, which is awareness of our utter dependence and our interdependence on the web of life. Huxley writes a little further in his book Perennial Philosophy, paradoxical as it may seem, it is, for very many persons, much easier to behave selflessly in a time of crisis than it is when life is taking its normal course in undisturbed tranquility. We've seen that after 9/11 and Hurricane Sandy and other kinds of national tragedy where people flocked to give assistance, or people who are in shock in the face of a tragedy sometimes rise to their better nature. When the going is easy, there is nothing to make us forget our precious selfness. Nothing except our own will to mortification and knowledge of God to distract our minds from the distractions with which we have chosen to be identified. We are at perfect liberty to wallow in our own personality to our heart's content. Did you get that? That's good. We are at perfect liberty to wallow in our own personality to our heart's content. And I might add, our drama. And how we wallow. It is for this reason that all the masters of the spiritual life insist so strongly upon the importance of little things. Following this thinking, it is gratitude for the little things in our lives, the air we breathe, the sun that grows our vegetation, the water we drink, the love of others and their love of us, even the difficulties we are presented with and challenged by that make our lives interesting and force us to grow, sometimes outside our comfort zones. Huxley writes, quote, "The saint is one who knows that every moment of our human life is a moment of crisis, for at every moment we are called upon to make an all-important decision, to choose between the way that leads to death and spiritual darkness and the way that leads toward light and life, between interest exclusively temporal and the external order and the eternal order, between our personal will or the will of some projection of our personality and the will of God." I stumbled over that sentence. Let me read it again. The saint is the one who knows that every moment of our human life is a moment of crisis. For at every moment we are called upon to make an important decision, to choose between the way that leads to death and spiritual darkness and the way that leads toward light and life, between interest exclusively temporal and the eternal order, between our personal will or the will of some projection of our personality and the will of God. The saint is mindful and chooses, my will or God's will be done. probably one of the largest spiritual programs in the United States and internationally are 12-step programs like Alcoholics Anonymous and all the offshoots, Narcotics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous, and so on. And in 12-step programs, they are very clear about this. And the first 3 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is that we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Number 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Saints are people in recovery. They are recovering from the conditioning of their own egos and turning their lives over to God as they understand God to be. The first principle of Unitarian Universalism, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, refers to the God seed which has to be cultivated and helped to grow within us until we reach the unitive, transcendent God consciousness called enlightenment. Is your church and religious practice helping you to become enlightened? How could it be more of a help? How could you help others? It says in the Course in Miracles that the purpose of A Course in Miracles is not to define love because love is undefinable. Its purpose is to help us become more aware of love's presence. And the way to become more aware of love's presence is to recognize and acknowledge our interdependence on the web of life. So here at this Lenten season, something to consider, seriously consider, is who are the people and what are the things that you're blessed by? And do you give them a blessing? Do you say thank you? In some instances, you could pay it forward. We do that by blessing things, relationships, other people, and we lift it up. I had a friend who taught me to say, when someone said, "Hi, Dave, how you doing?" "Happy to be here." We used to laugh about it. I love it. "Hi, how are you doing?" "Happy to be here." I've noticed that responding to people, to that customary greeting, kind of leaves them at a loss for words initially. "So Dave, how you doing today?" "Happy to be here." I've been doing that now for about 2 years. I think it's twice that I've had people respond with, "I'm happy to have you." I'll tell you, there's nothing better than the warm glow of rapport when someone says, "How are you doing?" And I say, "I'm happy to be here." And they say, "Happy to have you." That's it for tonight. I hope you have a great Lent. I appreciate your watching these videos. Feel free to use them in your small group ministry or just for your own entertainment and information and enjoyment. And by all means, leave a comment or send me an email at davidgmarkham@gmail.com. Thanks for watching, and have a good Lent, and have a good week. God bless you. Bye.